2, 1. Oh my goodness. Hello, everyone. We are here, and let's hope that doorbell doesn't ring while I do this. So, what was I going to talk about? UFC, featherweights, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes, and really, I'm not going to talk about the entire show. What I want to talk about is the featherweight division, because is it just me? But the featherweight 145-pound weight class is getting so much momentum right now. It's got so much life right now. It's just like this division is really starting to go places again. I've always been a fan of the 145-pound weight class. A bit of a backstory. I loved the weight class during the WEC days when we had Uriah Faber, when Jens Pulver moved down and out of the UFC to the WEC, the sister promotion. I never will forget watching Uriah Faber versus Mike Brown, and Brown knocking him out and becoming featherweight champion and fighting Leonard Garcia. Then the classic rematch, if you've never seen it before, where Faber broke both backbones in his hands and he had to utilize elbows the entire fight. I'll never forget that. And then to top it all off, when you think it can't get any better, Jose Aldo comes up and just dominates Mike Brown. Like, I never expected to see Mike Brown dominated like that back in 2009. I was just like blown away by what I saw. And Jose Aldo has been the king of that weight class ever since. And it was like a lot of people expected it to have this shot in the arm as soon as they came to the UFC. Unfortunately, it didn't. Not to say it failed, it just didn't have that boost that you were expecting. And I think had some of the events that I just mentioned happened in the UFC, with the UFC promotion and the Spike TV promotion, I think that weight class would have had more momentum a lot earlier. But it's taken some time. And you know what? Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo, the first time I watched it, it was a great fight. I think Aldo came off like a star in Brazil, like the big Brazilian star at that time. And then you don't see a lot of him. We know how good he is. We know how skillful he is. We know how talented he is. But it was just like, it was the Jose Aldo show at 145, and there wasn't much going on outside of that weight class. And I think that Aldo can't really carry that division on his own. He needs other fighters in the top 10 and the top 15 to help give that weight class the lift that it needs. So you go through 2012 and he knocks out Chad Mendes, and then it was like all these things happened lately and they've kind of given the division a lift that they need. We almost had Anthony Pettis fighting there at one point, and that was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's going to happen at some point. As Ashes for Real and Caesar the Ape God have always said that they believe that fight would happen. But we go to the last year or so, and you just look at what's going on right now, and it's really, really been interesting. Frankie Edgar going down to featherweight. He had that fight with Aldo, which was very, very close. I know some people even thought that Frankie Edgar won the fight, but Aldo won. You have Edgar going down into that weight class. Cub Swanson, who's been on a winning streak, which has made things very, very exciting. Edgar then fights BJ Penn this year and beats BJ. And then, of course, you have Jose Aldo and Chad Mendes, the rematch. And the thing about that made that so interesting to me was the fact that Chad Mendes improved so much over the last 2 years. And you have to give credit to the person he was working with, Dwayne Ludwig, because it seems to me that when Ludwig came in and worked with him, that Chad Mendes just became more confident, striking improved, he was just taking people out. It wasn't just like a standard wrestler with an overhand right now and shooting for the takedown at the same time. Now he's mixing it up, he's showing a lot more aggression, really dominating and strong performances throughout. And this made that rematch so much more interesting. Then add to the fact that these two appear to not like one another, it made it even more interesting. And this UFC, I could care less about any of the other fights. I wanted to see the championship fight. And that's a very good thing for that weight class and for that belt. And while Mendes didn't win the fight, to me, that really boosted him and really elevated him and gave him a lift that not many people can get from losing the fight, because it was a very, very close fight. Actually, no. He gave Aldo a better fight than I think people expected. When you compare to how he lost the first time, Mendes really gave him a much harder fight. He stood with him for a lot of the fight, And I'm going to be really, really honest with you. That gap that was appeared to have been so wide way back has gotten narrower and narrower. And they're not far from one another. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a third fight between the two of them. And I think that you could sell the fans on a third fight, because that fight really, really was exciting. It was very, very good. It was nice to see someone push out some other things from Jose Aldo. And it was just a very classic, high-speed, dramatic fight. And again, what weight class was that for? It wasn't at heavyweight, it wasn't at light heavyweight, it wasn't at middleweight, it wasn't at welterweight, it wasn't at lightweight, it was at featherweight. And that's fantastic for that weight class. And you look around now with what's going on at that weight class, and you have so many options. You have so many options, and it's fantastic if you're a fan of that weight class right now, because you've got so much to look forward to. I mean, you've got, whatever's going to happen with Mendes next, and I can see he's got, he's probably going to gain a lot more fans out of this. You've got what's going on with Chad Mendes after this. Jose Aldo looked like a king once again. You've also got Frankie Edgar and Cub Swanson, which I guarantee is going to be an absolute war, and I pray that it's going to be an absolute war, because those are the kinds of fighters, when you put them together, I expect to see violence. I expect to have my bloodlust satisfied like a good vampire. And I think that is going to be a great fight. And obviously you had what happened with Frankie versus BJ, and that, was publicity for the weight class too. You got Swanson and Edgar, obviously I've just mentioned. You got Mendes, who's just come off a loss, but I think he's going to gain a lot more fans out of this. Jose Aldo is a lot more interesting with, after this. And then you have the final shot in the arm. The final shot in the arm that I think has really taken the division even higher is that Conor McGregor has been on the rise. And, some people aren't going to like him. Some people aren't going to like his antics. Oh, he's too pro wrestling. It's not pro wrestling. Oh, he's a gimmick. Oh, my God, the sport's going to die. Oh, no, he's bringing this pro. He thinks he's Ric Flair. But look at what it's doing to the weight class. It's not killing the sport. It's not bad for the sport. He's actually gaining a lot of attention. And there are a lot of fans who recently have become fans that are not necessarily die-hard MMA fans that are watching Conor McGregor's fights. They're interested in him. And again, I asked the question, what weight class is that for? It's for 145. And that's very, very good for that weight class, because now that weight class has options outside of the Jose Aldo fight. They have a Conor McGregor fight, and they have, his charming personality, if you want to call it, that is drawing people in, and he's a decent fighter. I don't know how far he'll go. I don't know if I want to call him an elite level fighter just yet, but he's a very exciting fighter, and he's never boring when he fights. He's very, very entertaining to watch, and he brings an additional kind of momentum to that weight class that I think is really, really important. And I'm going to argue this: if we eventually do see McGregor and Aldo, I think that is going to be another legacy fight for that weight class in terms of just publicity, hype, and eyeballs, and how many eyeballs are watching this. And that's very, very important, because what I find people forget, amidst all the hoopla of this being a pure sport and all of this, all of this stuff, it's a spectator sport. This is a spectator sport. And people want to see big fights. And the fact that this year that's been one of the knocks on the UFC, everyone's injured, there's no big fights. You probably could have one with Aldo and McGregor. You probably could have one with McGregor and Mendes. You can have big fights for that weight class. And I think that weight class is doing so goddamn well right now. And it's very, very, very exciting. Fights at that weight class are never boring. They're usually very interesting. And you also wonder who else is going to come up. And if this is going to inspire more kids who could fight at that weight class to come up and help build that division into the future. So right now, featherweight is probably, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe I can, because I'm a big fan of lightweight, featherweight is my favourite weight class right now. I also want to stress this: bantamweight has got some good options right now. After what happened with Dillashaw and Burrell, that first fight, never did I expect a performance like that from TJ Dillashaw. Never did I expect him to completely beat up Renan Barão for 5 rounds, which he did. That really made me just go, whoa! And I watched that entire fight. And I have a lot of respect for Renan Barão's skills. Alright, he might not be the most exciting guy to watch, but I have a lot of respect for his skills. But then what happened with Dillashaw just got everyone's attention. Then you have the return of Dominic Cruz, and that has added to the interest for that weight class. Because Cruz, you know, it's a dramatic and very sad story, a fighter that I never liked at first. I always found him to be a bit cocky and a bit up himself. And then as the years have gone by, he's won me over. And I think a big part of it was when he did the Ultimate Fighter and he injured his knee and they had to tell him he couldn't do the fight. You can just see it. The guy looked heartbroken. Like, he looked absolutely devastated. And you couldn't help but feel for him. And then these 2 years away, you know, a year's surgery, then there's a setback, then he has to take another year out, then another injury. You had to feel for the guy. You had to feel for the guy. And he comes back, and it's a fantastic story of a guy that, you know, how's he going to look when he comes back? What's he going to do when he comes back? You know, this guy might be a write-off. And he comes back with a killer instinct. Just think about that for a while. Dominic Cruz, who I like watching fight, but was always knocked for not being a finisher and not having a killer instinct, he came back a killer. Because that guy took out Mcgregor, like literally took him out to the cleaners and then back again and then back to the cleaners. He took him out. And that has added some interest. And obviously you've also got the standard Uriah Faber fights at that weight class. You've got Michael McDonald, who's you know, he lost to Faber, but he's still a guy on the rise. You have a lot of interesting things. And you know what? Add to what I've just said, Bantamweight and featherweight have a lot of things going for them right now and a lot of options. And it makes me step out for a second, look at all the weight classes, and then I look at 125. And 125, I really hope can get to where those two weight classes are and the other weight classes are at some point. They have the one thing they need, a dominant champion, but they need options outside of that. And they also need, I kind of find Demetrius Johnson to be a bit vanilla when he talks. When he does an interview, he goes, I just can play my Xbox, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't excite me about what's going to happen when you fight the guys. So I hope that can happen with 125, with what we have going on with 135 and 145 and all the other established weight classes. I really hope that they can get there. But right now, featherweight and bantamweight, it's a very exciting time if you're a fan of those weight classes. I'm going to stop. You let me know what you think. Has anyone else noticed this boom of that weight class right now with featherweight? I know we had a boom back in the Uriah Faber era, but has anyone noticed this boom again now with all these options, and also with bantamweight? I want to know if you're a fan of that weight class, bantamweight or featherweight, or if you're not a fan of that weight class. I know some people have a size issue against these weight classes. Like, you know, I spoke to someone the other day, oh, well, they're not heavyweights, so I'm not going to watch that, which actually sounds pretty moronic. But anyways, I want to hear all opinions, all thoughts. I'm Buff Been Stuffed. Check out my Mark Hunt video. Sorry, I'm getting dry. Check out my Mark Hunt versus Verdun video. You can really see what I think about that. If you haven't already, comment below. Let me know. Ripping off Jeremy Jans. Hit the like button. Share with friends. Tell your mum. Tell your dad. Tell the person walking the dog. Tell everyone about me, because I give it to you straight. And if you haven't already, hit that. It's not up, is it? It's down. That subscribe button. Guys, take care. Peace. And I've got another video coming.